Cristal, I'm going to welcome you back up because this was the fourth video, was the one of yours that we shared and did that on purpose. So it was top of our mind. Not that the others aren't of any less importance, because they're all fantastic videos. I guess before we dive into yours, I'm wondering if you have any reflections on the other three videos that you shot, that we saw. So we had Alice doing the wheelchair dance and I Miss You, which was beautiful. And Ditches to Riches, which was interesting, of course, and the video from Quebec that was done in French. And I was trying to hear the French in the background because I speak very little French, but it's kind of nice. So any thoughts on those videos before we deepen into yours?
Definitely the first thing that I just always love about just artists in general is that we all were given the same parameters, and the variety of response is incredible. And I just like love that. So that was something that was so amazing for me to just actually watch, you know, the videos when they were coming out in the fall. It was amazing just because I knew what I did and what my interpretation of it, but seeing everyone else's. For me, definitely like the first piece, I was able to maybe connect with a bit more in terms of just like it's a little bit more abstract and fluid, and kind of this connection that she has with her movement and the water of the ocean. I thought were beautifully done, definitely.
Yeah, as someone who has low sight, to the description, I often have to remind myself, because they describe right at the top that Alice is a wheelchair dancer. And then when you hear things like the fact that she's doing these hard tumbles on the sand and in the water, that Alice is still in their wheelchair when this is happening. And so you kind of forget, because you're not seeing it and having the visual reminder that the wheelchair is always a part of this dance. So I just get lost in the description and I go, oh, right, there's a wheelchair there too. Oh my God. I can't even imagine what this looks like. So that's lovely. Talk about your piece, Cristal, because I do not know a lot about stop motion. And so I find this super interesting, which is one of the reasons too why I appreciated that you had this little sort of teaser at the end, the kind of the how-to, I did this. So tell us what stop motion is and how you got involved in this medium. Like, I can't imagine you just happen upon it, but maybe you do. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a fair question. So stop motion animation is actually really interesting because the principle of it is moving an object of any variety, one frame or one photo at a time. Frame and photo are kind of interchangeable words in this medium. But the idea is, you're kind of moving an object from point A to point B, one photo at a time. And then when you play that sequence back rapidly, it creates this illusion of movement. And that is the essence of, any kind of video or film that's being made. A bunch of frames are being captured, whether it's per second or per minute. And then when you play it back, that's what creates this movement. So animation is really, especially stop motion, like frame by frame animation is really, the foundation of what we know filmmaking to be now. And it's funny because I have a background in TV and film production. I do a lot of like graphic design and things like that. And we had this back in university. I went to Ryerson University here in Toronto. We had this guest speaker from the National Film Board of Canada come in and show us all this kind of experimental animated work. Some people were using old film reels and, adding collage elements to it, or, scratching film and playing it back and seeing like what happens there. Others were this kind of the grandfather of it here in Canada. His name is Norman McLaren. An incredible animator. He is actually one of the only like short animated films, stop motion, that's been nominated for an Oscar. And actually, I'm pretty sure that he won for Neighbors. There's only been a few after that, so it's it's quite special. But he was all about just like experimenting with this idea of movement and how we can play with it. So when I saw that, I was blown away. As a hobby kind of on the side, I started to do my own little experiments of moving things, one photo at a time. And I think the thing with stop motion is a lot of people think of claymation. They think of like Gumby or Wallace and Gromit, or here in Canada, like Pingu. All of that is these amazing, like classic handmade animated series or films. But for me, it was always thinking about using kind of materials outside the box. So maybe not just focusing on clay, but whatever, if the principle is that you can basically animate any object, how far can you push that? And that's really what kind of helped me take off in that direction.
So you chose rock salt of all things.
Yeah.
And just to remind our audiences of what we just witnessed in your video, when you go through the mantra of breathe, stretch, and repeat, there is a movement that's happening with each one, and it's a stop motion animation movement of a hand doing a different action that goes with breathe, stretch, and repeat. But the hand is made out of rock salt. Like this is stuff you put on your food. So
Yes.
why rock salt? And talk a little bit about how you break that down into like frame by frame photos.
Sure, yeah. So the hands actually doing, so like I said in my video, I suffer from chronic pain. And obviously my work and my passion directly, is affected by that. So it's a very interesting balance going through that, as many artists with disabilities understand. And so the stretches that are happening are stretches that, I have to do and that I've been doing, and I've gotten into this pattern of doing them. And when I do them in real life, when I have to take a break each hour or whatever it is, I do kind of enter a bit of like a little trance for myself, where I can kind of like escape to kind of just cope with the discomfort and the pain. And so in the piece, I wanted to kind of create that moment and share what that moment might be. And so the salt, so I had actually just created another piece maybe 6 months before, using just regular like cooking white salt. And I thought it was really interesting, but the salt was very, very fine and very small. And so basically what I do is I have a reference monitor of like a reference video. So let's say like in mine, for example, I took a video of myself actually doing all 3 stretches that I was going to showcase. And then I use this reference monitor to create, almost like recreating the shape of my hand with the salt. So I kind of start with the first frame. I fill in, my hand with all the salt, and then I take a photo, and then I go to the next frame and my hand has moved ever so slightly. And then I start to slowly push and move the salt to now fill this kind of new shape or new movement that the hand is doing. And so it's almost a little bit like almost tracing, like in that kind of idea, where you're kind of recreating each movement, each frame in that way. And then the piece is about a minute long, and each little fragment is maybe 3 seconds. In stop motion, there's 24 frames in a second. So I did it, over 72 frames per stretch. So there's a lot of movements there. And yeah, it was just, it's this kind of meditative, very patient process where I just kind of sit there and start slowly moving it to fill each frame.
That's quite labor intensive. So as an artist, how do you keep up that kind of stamina? Because
Yeah.
I would imagine, I don't know, I mean, can you leave the project and come back to it later, or do you need to just push through?
Yeah, so depending on what kind of setup you have, we kind of call them like live sets or hot sets, when you're in the middle of a shot and you have to unfortunately leave, whether you're working on a professional shoot or, and so there are opportunities that you kind of animate to a point where like it's okay to kind of leave it. And I'm very lucky that I have my own little studio space in my apartment, so I'm able to leave things and know that no one's gonna like move them on me. But there are moments, not necessarily in mine, but there are moments in films and things that I've worked on that no, you have to shoot the whole scene, because if you leave a puppet or if you leave an object, it might start to slide overnight or something, and then having to align everything the next day could take you like 3 hours. So it's such a waste of time to do that. So you do try and push through. It is a very physical job. This one I was lucky to do in my own home setup, so I could sit while I was doing it. But normally you're kind of standing, very not necessarily tense, but you don't want to kind of like add a lot of movement every time you're moving the object. So you're kind of holding your breath in a little bit. You're kind of in the most static position that you can be while you're moving your objects. So it is very, physical. And so there does need to be a bit of downtime, definitely in between each project, or because it's just your body is definitely goes through it for sure.
I can only imagine. Thanks, Crystal, for sharing this with us. I know you're going to stick around for the Q&A with the audience afterwards. So thank you for sharing us a bit about your artistic practice, because I find it so fascinating, because it's not a genre that I love to witness it, but not that I know a lot about. So thank
No
you.
problem.
Rick, we'll get you to start set number 2.